So of course he wanted to repent for his sins, and he ended up building a chapel, which used to be above our heads, in the crypt where we are stood right now. And even though it came about in a bit of a strange way, the chapel was held very highly in the world of education, and actually was built 100 years before Oxford University was even a thing. So this was the place for education. We once had a student here by the name of Geoffrey of Monmouth, and he wrote a book called The History of the Kings of Britain. Has anyone heard of this book? No, neither did I when I started this job. Oh, you have? Okay. But if you haven't heard of the characters, well, you would have heard of the characters in the book, such as King Arthur and the Wizard Merlin, that's in the book. There was also the first recorded mention of King Lear, which Shakespeare then used to put in his own play as well. Now, if you look towards these pillars around me here, you can see that they've been beautifully carved by the Norman stonemasons. And these designs on the corners are meant to look like leaves from trees. And back when they were first built, they were painted in bright and beautiful colours, and in red with golden trimmings around the edges as well. And the original ceiling was painted to look like the night sky. So a lot of attention to detail was within this room, and it was very beautiful. It's just a shame that the people who actually spent their time here didn't get to appreciate it. After all, this is a crypt, a storage room for dead bodies. So your body will be brought here and prepared by the monks, and either buried in the walls or in the graveyard just nearby. Which is why a lot of people say that this is the most haunted place in Oxford. So if you fancy coming back here by yourselves to see if you can find any ghosts, you're more than welcome to. Now, as I mentioned earlier, which will become a recurring theme on this talk, is Sir Thomas Fairfax wants to destroy everything because of what happened to the parliamentarians. That's why the chapel is not here, because he destroyed it. However, during its destruction, a lot of the rubble came down into the crypt. So the crypt was actually buried and lost for over a few hundred years. That was up until the late 1790s, when a prison governor by the name of Daniel Harris came along, and he wanted to build his brand new prison just above our heads. Now, Daniel Harris wanted to reform his prisoners by teaching them skills like building and crafting, so when they get out of prison, they can contribute to society. And to teach them those skills, he got them to build D-Wing, which is now above our heads, and the prison cell they would stay in as well. And when they were working upstairs, the floor had actually caved in, and they managed to rediscover the crypt, at least what was left of it. So Daniel Harris took this opportunity to restore the crypt and extend it as well, which of course was another job for the prisoners. And that's why the floor is so uneven, because they were working basically with little to no money, so any materials they found, they just recycled into something new. So in this case, they found bits of rubble and cobblestone that was just lying around and cemented it where they could, kind of like a big jigsaw puzzle. And because the floor upstairs had caved in, we needed to redo the ceiling, which is why, just above me here, you'll be able to see a keyhole, because that used to be a part of the door, and now they've upcycled it into a ceiling tile. They're very innovative back in those days. Now, the original size of the crypt was rather small. It only went up around these 4 pillars here. So they created a huge extension and built those 2 pillars you can see just there. And if you look carefully, you can't see the markings around the corners just like here. But to be honest, the prisoners had to teach themselves stonemasonry skills. So I think they did a pretty good job. After all, it has been holding up the ceiling for the past 300 years. So not too bad. So now I think it's only fair that we should go and appreciate the rest of their handiwork as we head upstairs to D-Wing and check out some of the prison cells as well. And just to say, it may feel like we're pulling you from room to room, but we do promise, after the tour, you get to revisit any of the rooms that we go on. We just have time to get to visit. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand you over to Harry, who's going to talk to you about some of the prison life.
Hi guys, you want to follow me? Feel free to Take a seat. So, welcome to a Tudor prison. You might see that there is, where it used to be a wall down the centre of this room. That's because where you're sat now is 2 cells. We've opened it up a bit so that we can fit more view for people in. But you can see that the conditions here would have been very small, very confined. There are normally 3 or 4 people crammed into a cell together, so it's very easy for diseases to spread. Now, I like to start the tour of this section of the prison with this device here, the pillory. It's a fairly self-explanatory device. This would be left out in public, and the accused would have to put their head into the large centre circle, their wrists either side, and would stay here in public for however long their sentence dictated, with the general public invited to throw things at them, like rotten food, dead animals, and sometimes human waste. Wow. Someone who spent a lot of time inside the pillory was Roland Jenks. In 1577, Roland Jenks was a Roman Catholic bookseller, accused of distributing anti-Protestant propaganda and insulting the Protestant Queen Elizabeth I. Jenks was sentenced to be pilloried by the ears for 3 days and 3 nights, which meant that after his head was put through, his ears were stretched out, a large nail was taken, and they hammered him into the board. This meant that his face would always be facing forwards, so if anyone was to throw something, he couldn't dodge it. When he heard about his sentence, he obviously wasn't particularly happy. So he cursed every single man within the courtroom that day. Within a few days, over 600 people fell ill. And within a few weeks, over 300 of those men had died. The victims included the judge, the jury, the magistrates, scholars from the university, and other high-ranking officials that were in the court that day. But no prisoners died. No women, no children, and no poor. No prisoners, despite it being on the same location as the courthouse on this site. This has remained one of Austin's biggest mysteries. Or maybe it isn't actually that much of a mystery. Some historians think that what actually happened is that while he was in prison due to the unsanitary conditions, Jenks contracted what's known as jail fever, or we would call it typhus, which he then spread to the other people within the courtroom by shouting, spitting, and touching everything. Other prisoners would have built a natural immunity to it, having been in such close contact with it so often. However, the men within the court wouldn't have done so. So succumbed to